still on our Enterprise Morning and our main conversation. The presidency has faulted the recent claim by Akinwumi Adesina, the outgoing president of the African Development Bank, on Nigeria's GDP per capita. In a recent report, Adesina was quoted as saying that Nigerians today are worse off than they were in 1960.
The AFDB chief was also reported to have said that Nigeria's GDP per capita in 1960 was $1,847 and $824 in 2025. Reacting, the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Mr. Bayo Onanuga, in a statement on Monday tackled Adesina, saying the figures he quoted are not correct.
Onanuga blasted Akinwumi, saying his conclusions were based on inaccurate figures and an incomplete understanding of Nigeria's economic progress. According to him, significant progress has been made in various sectors since 1960.
Dismissing Adesina's claim, Onanuga said Nigeria's GDP was $4.2 billion in 1960 and per capita income for a population of 44.9 million was $93, not even $100.
The presidency added that GDP per capita does not indicate whether Nigerians in 2025 will enjoy better access to healthcare, education and transportation, such as rail and air transport, than in 1960. This premise, according to the presidency, suggests why Dr. Adesina should not have arrived at his conclusion.
All right, that's the reportage we have now. Let's get talking. We still have with us Emeka Madonago. Emeka, you are one that truly does understand this better. I would love to believe even more than Onanuga has just stated here.
No, it's my guy.
Yes, it's your guy. But of course, we are not in the place to dismiss what Adesina has said. He is in charge of the AFDB, one of those symbolic and biggest financial institutions, that he has more than enough information to what he had just stated. So why would Onanuga, who is just but a communication strategist, want to,
fault his claim?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think it's all just, both of them are just saying the same thing. But, politics got into the mix. And then it appeared as if, there was a dissonance. No. Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, of course, as president of the African Development Bank, he understands, a lot of things about how economies in Africa, I think the 53 or 54 nations of Africa, have been faring. Because don't forget, AFDB has financed projects in Nigeria. They finance initiatives in Nigeria, ongoing initiatives in Nigeria. So they have a helicopter view of a lot of development. But the point is this, it's just like the World Bank recently warned Nigeria, that effort must be taken to prevent more people from going into poverty by 2027. The IMF also issued a warning to Nigeria to become prudent, to be mindful of how it's spending money. Now, the World Bank has brought out another warning that over 70% of the rural poor, of those in rural areas in Nigeria, are poor. So all of these things are meant, as signals to you. But what are they doing? They're saying, no. And what's the presidency doing? No, we are doing well. The reforms of presidency. You see, it does not show that you are serious. And that's a problem of, miscommunication. Nobody is saying you are not carrying out reforms. Yes, the fact that, the fact that you wash your car every morning doesn't mean that, some debt will not come on it. That's why they are saying, yes, you wash your car, but maybe the method through which, by which you're washing this car on a daily basis is not enough. You need to do more. So, yes, that GDP, the Nigerians in 1960 were better off than, yes, we had a smaller population. But of course, we could look at it that, okay, life expectancy as at that time was 37, according to what some experts have said, was 37. But today is 52, 53. Okay. Now, we look at it that education has improved, the population has increased from 44 million at independence to over 200 million. Nigeria, there have been more resources available to Nigeria, none of that. But the question is this. Look at a country like Kuwait. Is it not the fifth largest oil producer in the world? They have 5 million people. Look at what they produce. So you look at the quantum of the resources divided by the population. You see that those people are even doing better. So what it means is that we need to work harder because our population has increased. I don't think Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, meant it in negative point. But he was trying to say, look, if you insist on calculating by GDP, then you will run into a storm. And I'm happy that this GDP issue now is being put under the satellite. Because successive Nigerian government just love talking about GDP. I have said on this table and at different fora, I said it is dubious using GDP. Because GDP can mean anything. GDP is just the sum of activities engaged in by the people. Economic activities. You heard recently National Bureau of Statistics was talking about even crime, even smuggling of vehicles also can count as GDP. Even prostitution can count as GDP. There was a time Italy rebased their GDP. They added prostitution and gambling to it. So it's a sum of activities because money is exchanged, right? Mm-hmm. So you can even add kidnapping. You can add banditry. You can add terrorism to it. So that can never be a foolproof measure of, of determining how the economy, is impacting the lives of the people.
So what can be used to determine that? Yes?
The HDI, Human Development Index, it talks about how many children are educated in school. It talks about what's the proximity of what's the nearest hospital to you.
So how do we have it that no too much emphasis laid on this human? I mean,
on GDP, right? Is that that is why I'm happy now. Onanuga himself, Bayo Onanuga himself has come out to say that we cannot base, we cannot base the measurement on GDP. I said, thank God. So now, even the people who have been hiding with GDP now realize too that they've been fooling themselves, that they've been lying to themselves. And that is at the heart of our problem.
So when we are leaving the bottom line. I mean, we're leaving the main point, and then we are focusing our attention on something else.
Thank you. So the fact that I'm happy at what Onanuga said, that GDP cannot determine. So what it means is that if you want to look at a quantum of economic activities, do you know, I was reading something yesterday, that there has been a lot of economic activity in Borno State. If you look at the internally generated revenue of Borno State, it's even higher than some other states that are not suffering insurgency like Borno State.
And where is it coming from?
Development agencies. Let's say about over 100 development agencies. There have been construction going on in Borno State, hotels and houses. I said they are resettling people. So that the resettlement program too, has been bringing in money. People have been employed. Taking food to these people, carrying these people, back to their villages and all of that, helping them to get resettled, government giving them money, and a lot of money. I don't remember the figures now, but a lot of money. And this was done by an international agency. A lot of money has been coming into the coffers of the Borno State government. But will you now say, that Borno has more IGR than maybe one of these states in the south that's not suffering insurgency like Borno State? You'll be deceiving yourself. Because when you look at GDP per capita, you will see that the people of Borno State, are faring better. Mm-hmm. But it's not true. If you look at the Human Development Index, a lot of people are still displaced in Borno State. A lot of people cannot go to their homes. A lot of people don't have access to health facilities. A lot of people cannot send their children to schools. Schools are shut down. So you look at the Human Development Index, there's a lot of gaps. So what Adesina is trying to say is this. Can you take a look at the GDP you have been parroting? That it is not working. Because why? Your population increases by the day. The way you are producing children, particularly in the north, is so much. You have over 22 million children out of school. Now, the president removed subsidy. He took money from ordinary Nigerians and gave it to governors. Governors now have more money. But we're asking, where is the impact? Where is the impact? But the Constitution says in Section 162, subsection 3, that all monies generated by the Federation must be paid into the Federation account and shared by the federal, state, and local government. So what will the president do? He has to give it to the governors, but have the governors been doing anything? What have they been doing? They've been embarking on frivolous, wasteful expenditure. Wasteful expenditure, just junketing about. You know, I learned that one governor, one political event he was involved in, that he spent over 1 billion naira on that event. Just one event. Because they have more money. But they lack the necessary wisdom and economic ability, you know, to use those resources for the good of their people. Look at the governor of Anambra State, Professor Charles Soludo. He said that Anambra State has not, that his administration has not borrowed any money. There is internally generated revenue of the state that has been using, plus allocations from federation account. But can you say the same thing of other governors? There are some states where their people are wondering, do we have a governor in this state? So when you look at all of these things, you will find out that it's easy for people to run away. Look at Lagos, for instance. There are people who argue that Lagos should be far better than what it is. Yes. Because if you look at it, they tell you by GDP, Lagos is the 5th largest economy in Africa. But is this what we're talking about?
Because looking at the Human Development Index, like you just said, it's not.
It's a different picture. Even though I know successive governments in Lagos State have actually tried in the area of education, health, and all. But you see, Lagos State government itself said it would pay, or it has paid subsidy to 18.5 million residents. So that means they have backtracked on the 22 million population they said Lagos had. They've come down to 18.5 million. But you see, catering to 18.5 million people every day is not a joke. You got to look at their food. You got to look at social services. You got to look at so many things.
But is it even sustainable? Because
that is what I've done. You have to engage in policies that are sustainable. But I want to tell you that there are a lot of policies today that are not sustainable. So you just take people out. Okay, look at the president. He brought out tax reform bills, but the states were opposing it. Why? They want more money. They are always fighting. Governors are always fighting, bring more money. But they are not telling you how much more effort they are going to put into developing their states. And that's why President Muhammadu Buhari, when he was president, he's one of his ministers, was it Jedi Agba, the Minister of State for National Planning, said the basic problem of Nigeria is at the grassroots. Now that's where you have more people. They have more people in the urban and rural areas than you have in the urban areas. So that if we cannot deal with poverty in those places, then we're joking. And is that not what the World Bank has said now?
It's very true.
That a large number of Nigerians in rural areas are poor. Do you know? I mean, the three of us sitting on this table, it's possible we have been sending money to our people back home.
Of course.
Is it supposed to be like that? Is it not in the rural areas that you have the farms? You don't have federal food. You have a federal Minister of Agriculture, but you don't have federal farmers. Do you have federal farmers? All politics is local. Farming, agriculture is local. But the people are poor. They cannot go to their farms. In many states, they can't go to their farms because of the criminals in those farms, in the forests. They can't go to their farms. The people are just left in a state of helplessness. So all this talk about GDP, rebasing GDP, the other time, some weeks ago, they talked about that they are rebased GDP, that they are rebased the inflation rate. But did it do anything? It didn't do it because the inflation rate has been steadily rising again. So when you do not properly calibrate the processes by which you calculate economic development, you will just be winking in the dark. And that was what Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, but look at how Bayo Onanuga spoiled the whole thing. He said he's talking like P2B. You see, when you reduce...
I was just trying to...
When you reduce...
I was trying to place a
when you reduce serious issues to triangulation, okay, this teacup should actually be sparkling white. But if not that it's on top of this saucer, it will be shining white. Tell me what that has to do with anything. If you didn't wash this teacup well, or if you wash the saucer better than you did wash the teacup, there'll be a difference. So why are you now dragging Peter Obi into the issue? We're talking about economic activities. How many people around the world know Peter Obi? But you know what you're doing now? More people are going to go and make a research about Peter Obi. Who is this Peter Obi?
Yes, that can
Oh,
speak
so
like
you
the
are saying he's giving him more popularity.
That is it. And you are by deflecting, by engaging in triangulation, psychological trick of triangulation. What you're doing is that people will go and say, this Peter Obi they keep talking about, who is this man? Instead of looking at the issues, look at Trump now. Yesterday he submitted his budget for 2026, $1.7 trillion budget. And in that budget, he has said that he has proposed that the US government will stop contributing to the African Development Fund. It is an initiative of the African Development Bank. Now, the African Development Fund has done a lot. Nigeria has benefited over $6.2 billion from the African Development Fund. Now, that money is not going to be available. That money came in useful during COVID. It was one of the things that helped us stabilize during COVID. And in some other initiatives, health and all of those, vaccination, girls, the girl child and all of those things. But now that money will no longer be available from the US. Although there are some other, I think the US contributes 6% of the total annual budget, of the African Development Fund. There are other donors too. But you see, every kobo counts. In economics, every kobo counts. So now, if the U.S. Senate passes that bill like that, if it approves that, it's going to be a big drawback to Africa. Even though people say, why are you people always begging? Well, it doesn't work. The world doesn't work like that. Because some of these things also have to do with technical capacity, which we lack. How many Nigerians are there? Do we know how many we are? We have a big problem of counting, like one of my former bosses would say. We don't know how many we are. We don't know how many barrels of crude we produce. We don't know how many vehicles are on Nigerian roads. We don't know anything. So, what is it? It just estimates. We just keep guessing. And so, if you are trying to counter Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, know that the whole world is watching you. But Bayo Onanuga seems to have a fixation with Peter Obi. That maybe if, he cannot, he wakes up in the morning and he's having a bad day, it's Peter Obi. If his salary is delayed, it's Peter Obi. I mean, when you reduce serious arguments, economic arguments, to banal issues, to banal personal, hateful, personal prejudice, then what do? You make people laugh at you. And he has put the presidency to ridicule. Because this has to do with just basic argument. So will the Tinubu administration now kindly move away from that GDP trap to the HDI? So that way you can look at it, that okay, how many people use Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, for instance, every day? How can we make their lives safer? As I was coming here, there was a woman who was knocked down by a bike, running one way on the expressway. So how can you make Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, safer? Because, like it is said, that it's the busiest highway in West Africa. So how can you make it safer? Because of the number of people who use it. Why isn't there a bridge at Kara?
Very true.
Or at Opik, a pedestrian bridge? Why don't you have like 20 pedestrian or 30 pedestrian bridges on this expressway so that people can cross the expressway? Why should we in 21st century, on an international highway, why should people be crossing the highway? It is a retrogressive idea. So what we need to do is that we must tell ourselves the truth. In 1960, didn't we have more steady power supply? We had ECN then, Electricity Corporation of Nigeria. When there was going to be an outage, they will write. They will put it in the newspaper that there will be an outage in so and so area for so and so, a period of time. But today, you just hear children say, up NEPA.
And those
and
days,
then maybe
I actually saw an advertorial, that should be 1960 something, where the ECN, isn't it? Okay, had helicopters that they used for monitoring
NEPA,
of our national grid.
NEPA even,
those times
they heritage.
Yeah.
And you know the thing, we don't even need helicopters today. There is something called SCADA. SCADA is an advanced equipment for real-time monitoring of facilities. You can use it it can tell you within the shortest possible time if there is a fault anywhere. That thing, as at 2-3 years ago, was around 300 million. Today, maybe it has got to 500 million. But why don't we ask these people, why don't we have SCADA on our national grid to know when it's failing? Because this thing doesn't just trip off like that.
Of course, yeah.
It's gradual.
It gives you time. It gives you.
There was a time in Nigeria that Afam Power Station in Rivers State used to be like the generator of Nigeria. Anytime you had, and that was before you had all these gas stations. So, anytime there was a problem on national grid, Afam will spring. Afam will still supply, power. I think that it was being managed by Shell or something. But today, what has happened? Everything just goes down at the same time.
So in other words, maintenance culture is another thing.
That's what I'm talking about, technical capacity. We have more facilities today. That was where Bayo Onanuga missed it. We have more facilities today. We have a bigger population today. We have more responsibilities today. But do we have the technical capacity like they had? Look at Kainji Dam and others. We were built in 1962 now. Tafawa Balewa took a loan for two dams. Then you look at so many things. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, he start free education? And you see the number of children that were educated. In the East, Sir Michael Okpara, didn't he do the same thing? Education and all of that. They got one American company, to, is it D-Little or something, to draw up a development plan for the Eastern region. And that's how they built Transamadi in Port Harcourt. They built different things, The ACB, African Continental Bank, different ACB, also helped in providing loans to businessmen and others. That's why in different places, you have Bank of British West Africa. You had today's Wema Bank. It used to be Agbomagbe Bank. And different things here and there that the people could rely on. But today, more people are going into crypto. More people are going into scams, CBEX and the rest of them. Because why? You're an entrepreneur. You need a loan of maybe 1 million naira. They'll ask you to go and bring your grandfather's birth certificate. They will give you conditions. So at the end of the day, how do you make a headway? And that is what they're talking about.
Emeka, I've always thought about this particular idea, and I do not know how I can sell this idea to almost every state governor in Nigeria. Do you think it makes any sense if a governor takes up the challenge of creating industrial hubs in every senatorial district in their state? Every state has...
No, but they have now. In Lagos State, you have a number of industrial estates.
Not industrial estates where people live, because industrial estates we have right now, before you know what happens, it's now residential estates. We're talking about
is it not the market that people will buy that you display? Abi? Is the market that people, if more people are buying teacups and saucers, is that not what real estate people... If people are buying more for residential, that's what realtors will market now.
Yeah, so
because when you talk about industrial, where is the power? Where is the security? That's the problem. So you find out that we need to deal with, for instance, that power problem. To the extent that Aso Rock now has surrendered, that they cannot be paying for 7 billion naira every year as an electricity bill. So they have now, like the rich have done in Nigeria. The rich and powerful, they've now created for themselves 10 billion naira solar. You saw the Lagos State Deputy Governor, or Dr. Bafemi Hamzat, saying the other day that the bill they have been giving him, the bill is too high, Within that period, they quickly mounted solar panels on his roof. Have you heard him say anything again? That is it. The rich in Nigeria, they know how to take care of themselves. But was that what it was as independence? No. Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa will go to his village in today's Bauchi State. There was a BBC reporter that went to interview him in his way. Prime Minister was sitting on the ground with 2 children.
With two children, yeah.
Prime Minister of Nigeria was sitting on the ground with 2 children.
Unfortunately, ours go to France.
Yeah, for where? How dare you sit on the
relaxing
ground? It's impossible. When you talk about GDP per capita, 1,800 something. By today, we shouldn't be talking of 800 something, because you know what? The value of the naira today is worse than it was at the time the naira was invented. Was it in 1976 or 1978? Can you compare it to what the naira was to the British pound, to the US dollar? You cannot. So 1 naira was exchanging for, I think, $1 at a time, 75 British pounds at a time. So, do you have that today? You don't have that. So, when we look at all these things, do you know the 2025 budget is 45 trillion. But go through the budget, all the budgets, previous budgets of 2023, 2022, 2021, and all of that. They are of more economic and monetary value
than what we have.
Than the 45 trillion. So, why should there be an argument? Why should there be an argument? Because it's business. Yes, Nigeria has made strides. I mean, yes, we agree. But the point is that the World Bank said it that over 133 million Nigerians are in multi-dimensional poverty. There's a world poverty clock that has put Nigeria as a poverty capital of the world. So telling us you are doing reforms is all balderdash. Let me give you an example quickly. Do you know from Lagos to London, it's more expensive than from Accra to London? Somebody said he flew the other day, there's 11,000 pounds, Lagos to London. Accra to London, he said it's 5,000 pounds. Within the same Africa, the same West Africa. So when we allow, you see, when we allow our people go through all these horrendous experiences, of course we can guess why foreign airlines, why airlines would get away with some of these things. Why? Because there are allegations that they have some of these officials in their pockets. So you want to fly, they give you free flight ticket. How can you challenge them? How can you challenge them? That is the issue. So our leaders, and one of the things that Bayo Onanuga missed in what Dr. Adesina said was this. Can you compare the character the character of the leaders we had at 1960 with the character of the leaders we have today? The answer is no. The Premier of the Northern Region, Ahmadu Bello, used to ride in an open vehicle then. Open vehicle. Today, our governors move as if they are emperors. You want to talk of the president? He was in Katsina the other. Look at the entourage. You see a governor, ordinary minister of FCT, yes, on weekend moves about in a Rolls Royce. But yet he went to China to come and beg China to come and finance development projects in the FCT. How will they take you seriously? Does the Chinese premier, does he ride in a Rolls Royce? You see, the other problem is character. It's very, very important.
Very, very true. Character so very important. And the lack of it, or the deficit of it in Nigeria, is what has brewed, unfortunately, the situation we have today in Nigeria, where nothing seems to be working. And we truly do hope that that will change if it's ever possible. We just have to let it rest for now. And thank you so very much, Emeka, for being part of it. We truly do appreciate you. And that's the time we have, Jane.
Right, like you said, Henry, we hope that everything turns around for us in Nigeria as it affects both a whole number of majority of Nigerians. Tomorrow again will be another time to join us on Enterprise Morning. Thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you so very much. I'm Henry Igwebike.
And I'm Jane Aina.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Have yourself a splendid day. Bye-bye.